Hey, Carrie, this is good. Yes, here we are again.
Yep.
Another
Bible
question
testing.
from you. You tested me. It's good.
You passed with flying colors.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you very much indeed. Okay, so the bottle of wine is yours. Yes, good. Okay.
No problem. All right. So this time it's all about application.
Oh, okay.
Because I want to know about certain concepts in our modern world, whether we can get some inferences from the Bible, whether the Bible has a stance on these issues.
Oh, all
So,
right. Okay.
First one, monogamy.
Monogamy. Okay, yeah. I assume by that you mean the marriage of one. Technically speaking, monogamy means the marriage of one wife, but it's come to mean the marriage of one partner. So if you like, one man, one woman.
Mm-hmm.
I realize now we also perhaps need to include in the wider world maybe same-sex marriages, which can also be monogamous in a sense that they are one-on-one. Okay, mono at mono. All right, I'm going to address specifically heterosexual marriage, partly because I don't want to spread it far and wide. I'm not denying that there are same-sex relationships. I'm just saying I'm going to focus on those.
Save that for another episode.
That's another episode for another day.
Yeah.
Monogamy, in other words, now clearly, interestingly, the Bible reflects an amazingly long culture. You got to understand that the culture that the Bible represents is about 1,500 years. Now, in that time, cultural, moral, societal mores and the way people do things change radically. So, for instance, in the early parts of the Old Testament, it's Abraham, for instance, when they want to have a child, he doesn't have relations with his wife. He has it with Hagar, the slave girl, and it's Sarah, his wife, who sets that up. So the idea of one man, one wife was not necessarily a norm in that level of expectation. In other words, it wasn't considered to be immoral for a man to have a concubine, maybe more than one wife.
King Solomon has 1,000.
Oh, yeah. Solomon just took it to the, not just a higher level, but oof. Anyway, and yeah, with the kings of Israel, they had more than one wife. Jacob clearly, I mean, he had 12 sons by Leah, Bilhah, Zillah, and Rachel. So two of whom were his wives and two of whom were his, helpers. Anyway, so that level of monogamy is not. Now, interestingly, we know of the Mesopotamian world at the time. There wasn't a general expectation. We know from, for instance, tablets that we've discovered, cuneiform things from about 4,000 years ago in Mari and so on, Ebla, various places, that actually one man, one wife was a norm, but it wasn't unacceptable for there to be two or three or whatever. So things change. However, it is quite interesting that right at the beginning in Genesis, that is the reason why a man shall leave his father, and this is said right at the end in the creation story, that this is why a man shall leave his father and mother and take unto himself a wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And that's in chapter 2, verse 24, I think. But, and this whole idea that men and women complement one another. And I mean by complement one another, they fit together, they work together best well. And that's been taken as, if you like, the statement of monogamous relationships. And clearly, by the time we get to sort of near the time of Jesus, it's really expected that there's going to be one man, one wife. That does not mean that divorce, in fact, Jesus was questioned about divorce, whether it was legitimate. And Jesus says, well, actually, if you're just thinking of putting your wife aside, because women couldn't afford to divorce their men, men could divorce women, but not the other way around. And Jesus actually makes it equal and say, sorry, you divorce your wife for no other good reason, you're going to commit adultery. I'm sorry. So he really does fix on, and he uses that one statement, a man shall leave his father and mother and take himself a wife, and two shall become one flesh. So, yes, you might argue that the general viewpoint of the Bible is monogamous. But that doesn't mean to say that every person in the Bible was monogamous. No. Okay?
Obviously.
All right.
All right, next one. How about democracy?
Oh,
A lot
no.
of Western countries.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, a lot of Western countries adopt the system of democracy.
Yeah, they do.
And at the same time, their leaders are Christian. So a lot of times these concepts are being tied together. Like, oh, let's vote for the leader that we want, who loves God. And sometimes we find that, oh, these two concepts seem to be connected, but it might be just a campaign thing. So did the Bible say anything about democracy, political system?
Absolutely not.
I would expect
is the answer to democracy. Interestingly, that doesn't mean to say it wasn't actually developing alongside the Bible, because Plato, who lived 400 years or so before Jesus, he was the one who talked about democracy. Developed that sort of understanding of political system. But Plato's democracy is nothing like what we think. Plato said, yeah, people should vote, but only the people who are educated. So if you're stupid, thick, or never educated, or whatever, you should not be allowed to vote at all. Well, that's not the modern version of democracy. Democracy, of course, as a political system, really means you have your say in government, but you don't have your way, because who you may vote for may not be eventually the party that wins. So you may have your say, but you do not necessarily have your way. And it's all bound up with freedom. The Bible is in a, if you like, in a pre-political world. The world of the New Testament was the world of the Empire of Rome. Nobody was interested in what you thought. Not a bit. The world of the Old Testament, about empires and this and that, nobody was interested in what you thought or what you said. However, the world of the Bible is a theocracy. Theos being the word for God. In other words, what the Bible is saying is that our humanity is made true under the rule of God. And since God involves us, and I want to go way back. I know I keep talking about Genesis, but God says right at the beginning of the story, people just gloss over it. They don't bother to read it properly. Let us make mankind in our own image. Male and female he made. It was so important. Equal, okay? Male and female he made them, and they made them in our image. Now, that actually doesn't mean we look like God. It means that we're to be like God in free will, in the way we think, to do the things that he says. And then right at the end of that passage, when he says, right, I want you to have dominion and co-rule with me over the earth. That doesn't mean we can do what we like with it. We're to care for it. In other words, what he's saying is we partner with him. Now that was a unique understanding that is only found in biblical terms. It's not in any other contemporary documents of the time. This idea of God partnering with humanity. And actually that is much more noble than democracy. Because in the end, with all the love in the world, if I vote for another person, I'm assuming that they know what they're doing. But actually, they know about as much about the future as I do. It doesn't matter how many advisors have you got. Like, how many people predicted COVID? Yeah, okay. No one. And that's impacted us for 2 years. And it's thrown the world into, not necessarily chaos, but it's changed everybody's plan. So what I'm saying is that I would prefer to have a sovereignty of God than I would the sovereignty of any human. However, we are also called to be good citizens. That is, we are called. We're told to be obedient citizens, to obey the law as far as we are able to without disobeying God. Theocracy rather than democracy.